Among all the good in the world and all the progress being made in global issues, there is still much more to be done. Given the overwhelming disasters that nations, including here in the Philippines, have been or are still going through, it is important to be aware of the most pressing global issues. So now I am going to discuss the top 10 current global issues. So the first one is climate change. The global temperatures are rising and are estimated to increase from 2.6 degrees Celsius to 4.8 degrees Celsius. So, if we are going to compare the climate that our grandparents had experienced before compared to now, or compared to the climate that we are experiencing right now, it's quite different, right? So, when we say climate change, it is accompanied by global warming because it is the increase of temperature in our planet's atmosphere. So, this would cause more severe weather, crisis with food and resources, and the spread of diseases are expectedly to occur, to be occurring. So the reduction of greenhouse emissions and the spreading of education on the importance of going green. So what is meant by going green? So it is simply planting more trees or in other words, reforestation. Reforestation can make a big difference. So lobbying governments and discussing policies to reduce carbon emissions and encouraging reforestation is an effective way of making progress with climate change. The second one is pollution. Pollution is one of the most difficult global issues to combat, as the umbrella term refers to ocean litter or pesticides and fertilizers, air, light, and noise pollution. We know, or we already know that uh, water is one of the most important thing that humans and animals need, right? And clean water is essential for humans and animals. But did you know that more than 1 billion people don't have access to clean water? And that is due to pollution from toxic substances, sewage, or industrial waste. It is of the utmost importance that people all over the world begin working to minimize the various types of pollution in order to better the health of our earth and all those living on it, including humans, including us. The third one is violence. Violence can be found in social, cultural, and economic aspects of the world. Whether it is conflict that has broken out in a city, hatred targeted at a certain group of people, or sexual harassment occurring on the street, violence is preventable problem that has been an issue for longer than necessary. With continued work on behalf of the governments of all nations as well as the individual citizens, the issue can be addressed and reduced. Someone na siya. And for the fourth one, security and well-being. The United Nations is a perfect the United Nations is a perfect example of preventing the lack of security and well-being that is a serious global issue. Through its efforts with regional organizations and representatives that are skilled in security, the UN is working toward increasing the well-being of people throughout the world. And for the fifth one is lack of education. So, according to a certain report, more than 72 million children throughout the globe that are of the age to be in the primary education are not enrolled in school. So it's very sad to know, right? So this can be attributed to inequality and marginalization as well as poverty. Fortunately, there are many organizations that work directly with the issue of education and providing the proper tools and resources to aid schools. And for the sixth one is unemployment. Without the necessary education and skills for employment, many people, particularly 15 to 24 years olds, struggle to find jobs and create a proper living for themselves and their families. So, one of the very reasons why unemployment occur is the lack of education. So, so going back to unemployment, so this leads to a lack of necessary sources such as enough food, clothing, transportation, and proper living conditions. Fortunately, there are organizations throughout the world teaching people in need the skills for jobs and interviewing, helping to lift people from the vicious cycle of poverty. So, fortunately, Nade. And for the seventh one is the government corruption. Corruption is a major cause of poverty considering how it affects the poor the most, or how it affects the poor the most. So, eroding political and economic development, democracy, and more. Corruption can be detrimental to the safety and well-being of citizens living within the corrupted vicinity and can cause an increase in violence and physical threats without as much regulation in the government. So here in the Philippines, one of the current issue of government corruption is, the PhilHealth thing in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is one of a very, suitable example of government corruption. And for the eighth one is malnourishment and hunger. Currently, there are 795 million people who do not have enough to eat. So, long-term success to ending world hunger starts with ending poverty. With fighting poverty through proper training for employment, education, and the teaching of cooking and gardening skills, people who are suffering will be more likely to get jobs, earn enough money to buy food, and even learn how to make their own food to save money. But it is sad to know that there are still a lot of people who are suffering from, malnourishment and hunger. But hopefully, our government will still be pursuing on uh, doing or in making projects that would help our uh, fellow ones who are suffering malnourishment and hunger. And for the ninth global issue is the substance abuse. Um, according to the United Nations, by the beginning of the 21st century, an estimated of 185 million people over the age of 15 were consuming drugs globally. Oh, imagine that. So the drugs most commonly used are marijuana, cocaine, alcohol, amphetamine stimulants, opiates, and volatile solvents. So different classes of people, both poor and rich, partake in substance abuse, and it is a persistent issue throughout the world. So petitions and projects are in the progress to end the global issue of substance abuse. And for the last one is the terrorism. Terrorism is an issue throughout the world that causes fear and insecurity, violence and death. Across the globe, terrorists attack innocent people, often without warning. This makes civilians feel defenseless in their everyday lives. So, making national security a higher priority is the key in combating or in fighting terrorism, as well as promoting justice in wrongdoings to illustrate the enforcement of the law and the serious punishments for terror crimes. So, muna to siya. So, with so many current global issues that require immediate attention, it is easy to get discouraged. However, the amount of progress that organizations have made in combating these problems is admirable, and the world will continue to improve in the years to come. By staying active in current events and standing up for the health and safety of all humans, everyone is able to make uh, a difference in changing the fate of our world.